In Matthew chapter 27, starting in verse 24, it says, "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rains fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on the house. But it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell. And great was the fall of it."
Glorify thy name. Glorify thy name. Glorify thy name in all the earth.
Hello, my name is Mike Gray, and welcome to another 5-minute message. And here I am at Big Lagoon State Beach here in Northern California. And being here on the beach, it reminded me of that verse where Jesus said that the wise man builds his house on the rock, but the foolish man builds his house on the sand. But what was interesting about those verses is he prefaces all that with, "The man who hears my words and does them." And that's what I want to talk about this week, is the key to that verse. It's not just hearing the word, but it's doing the word as well. For example, in the book of James, chapter 1, verses 19 through 25, it says, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore, put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word which is able to save your souls. But be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law of liberty and preserves, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing." You see, James is making that equation of you can have all the faith that you think that you can have, but if you don't do what you believe in, if you don't put it into practice, it's useless. So it's important that we take those things that we learn from God's Word and we put them into practice. Because if we don't put them into practice, they don't become real to us, and they just become words. And we don't become the servant of God that He would have us to be. In Luke chapter 10, He tells the parable of a man who fell victim to robbers, and how the priest walked across the road to avoid him. But a Samaritan, a good Samaritan, helped him out, took him to an inn, took care of his wounds, and gave the innkeeper money to take care of him until he returned. And he finished this parable with these things in verse 36 and 37. "Which of these three do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers?" And he said, "The one who showed him mercy." And Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." Not you're right, you understand the concept, you understand the principle, but go and do it. Put it into action in your life. When you see people that need help, don't just look at them and go, "Oh," but get up and do something about it. Help them out, help your neighbor. That's what loving your neighbor is all about. Finally, again in Matthew chapter 7, just prior to the verses that we read to begin this video, he talks about how doing the will of the Father is the most important thing. And if we don't do it, He's going to reject us. If you look at Matthew chapter 7, verses 21 through 23, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter into the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name?' And then will I declare unto them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.'" This happens so often that people will read God's Word, they'll listen to it and say, "Well, I know He says to do this, but I'd rather do this." And I'll serve God this way because this is more into my lifestyle. This is more into my way of doing things. And God says he will reject us for doing that. We have to do his will, not our will. So it's important that we not just read the Bible. It's not important that we hear sermons on Sunday. And it's not just important that we go to classes every opportunity that we have to learn about God's will if we don't take those things and put them into action. Make them part of our lives so that they become real and part of us. Because the last thing we want to do is stand before God and have him say, "Depart from me, you who worked outside the law." Thank you for watching.
Glorify thy name in all the earth.